What is mentorship? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? Why would you even want to do it?
Howdy, folks. Welcome to Thinking Outside the Bytes, a show where we dive deep into topics that are relevant to people in tech, but it's not always about the tech.
Hey, friends, I'm Nick Floyd.
And I'm Kirby Fouché.
We've gained so much from so many people. So many people have chosen to like help us and take take the time to help us walk through this thing called work and life and development. Earmarks of great mentors, great leadership. Actually, where it's just they can see the things that no one else can. Even when you're so close to yourself, right? Like oftentimes we can't see that. We're too close.
Today, Nick and I are going to talk about the topic of mentorship. We're going to tell some stories about mentors who have positively impacted our lives and share some thoughts about how to find and create cultures where mentorship can thrive, even in companies that don't have the best cultures to begin with. So when I was at HP, I started there on a small team in Corvallis, where I went to school as as an intern.
Yeah.
And in that first job, I met a lot of people who then fed the entirety of the rest of my career. There was that moment right at the beginning, which I think is a really critical moment for people. I had a couple people that really mentored me. So my first job at HP, I was an intern, but it was an extended internship. Like I was going to school and doing this internship at the same time. I think I was taking like 21 credits and doing 30 hours a week or something. So kind of like insane world. But that job was not a job where I had to do a whole lot of thinking. Like my, my first job at HP I was measuring boot up times in Windows. So I had a stopwatch and I would hit start and I would start the timer at the same time that I started the computer. And as soon as the Windows, I think this was Windows maybe before XP. I don't know,
Okay.
somewhere in that
Like
time period. As
like
soon as the
was it
start
was it
menu
ME?
appeared,
Was that before XP? Is that
I
the
Yeah, we I remember testing ME, so that was part
mm,
of it. So yeah,
such
there
a
was
good
XP ME with business laptops too, so I'm sure I was testing some NT variant or whatever back then.
oh, okay.
But literally at a time from the time you hit go till the like start menu appeared. Also tested like sleep and hibernate and all of that stuff. But that was my job. So like I had to record times. So
Nice.
very simple, straightforward. Like anybody could do that kind of job. But I had really people great that I worked with that were inspiring. And so rather than just doing that job, built a whole website. You could track
Mm,
results. You could look at history. You could kind of see how things are progressing, what version of the BIOS this version of the BIOS looked like compared to an old one. Could do some comparisons and all that. And kind of me working with that group of people who then kind of recognize that. We
I
just
gotcha.
started to form kind of like a team. And I'm not saying I drove the team, but like just people that wanted to do great things. And it ended up being the manager. Her name was Sheila, and another lead engineer. His name was Pon. So we had an extended period where we worked together for maybe like 10 or 11 years, something like that, on
Gotcha.
stuff from mobile computers to IT to industrial printing presses and disk labeling and just all kinds of different stuff. But I started off, like I said, as like an intern who knew nothing coming out of
Mm,
college into like a business world where we were working on products that people could use out there in the world, right? And so going from an education to experience took a lot of learning and a
yeah.
lot of growth. And without those two, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like they nudged me in the direction of leadership.
Mm,
They gave me like really good advice. They invested a lot in me. They hired me again for multiple roles. In all of them, they were always giving me advice, like the entire time. Um, I was a young engineer who thought I knew everything, but I really didn't. And so they would kind of guide me on how to work better with other people and how to be a leader. And in fact, like Sheila is the one who pushed me into leadership. Like
mm,
it wasn't a thing I was necessarily even thinking of, but she put me on some projects where I was leading those projects. And then a job opportunity came up and she said, you should really apply for that. Like I think you should. And so like
mm,
I was getting kind of this person supporting me, these people supporting me throughout, um, that kind of knew better than me what was good for me,
yeah.
and had perspective that I didn't have, and
Yeah.
kind of gave me
Yep.
nudges in a direction that I just wouldn't have even taken
To call that out,
otherwise.
I think like a very extraordinary mentor attribute is they'll often encourage, promote, and care for you in such a way that often undermines their needs, right? Like that'll often like
100%.
ship you off to somewhere else, or make sure that like you get the best for your career, for your whoever whatever you need. I've noticed that across like any extraordinary mentor that I've ever had has always done that. And I'm like, wow, what, are you sure? Because you're literally saying, you want me to go? Is it because you don't like me? And they're, it's just like,
Yeah,
no, it's
they
no.
just want to get
Yeah,
rid of us.
it's gonna like
That's
get you off.
what it
That's
is. Yeah.
probably the reality. But like what I
Yeah.
want to tell myself is, no, I mean, it's oftentimes that it's a very self-sacrificial stance, and which I love. Which,
100%. I have a perfect example of that. At one of the companies I worked for, another great mentor, her name was Dana, is Dana. And I was working for her. I joined the company working in her organization, and then a new product was going to be
Mhm.
built, and they needed to find somebody to lead that. And she pushed for me to do it, like
Yeah.
which then created a void in her org, right? Like that was a situation where yeah, it was not in her best interest again, unless she was just trying to get rid of me, which
Right.
is quite
It's totally
possible. But
plausible though, right?
uh
Like, yeah, we just,
totally
yeah.
a little more plausible than I'd like to admit. But seriously though, like that takes somebody caring more about somebody else than
Mhm.
themselves and
Yeah.
putting them forward in a way that also like I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I didn't know whether I could do that. And she both like put me out there and gave me the nudge and kind of pushed me along in a way that I wouldn't have put my own hat in
Yeah.
the ring for it. I wouldn't have raised my
Yeah.
hand, I don't think. And so over and over and over again, I've been really, really fortunate to have people who are just thinking about what's best for me and looking for
Hmm.
ways to kind of make that happen, both in giving me great advice and coaching and but also in like just setting up opportunities. Yeah, when you can find people that can have that kind of impact on your life, it's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like that meta, kind of the meta aspect of the reality of work, right? Like we have to do it to some extent, and it could, you could kind of slog through it and just be disappointed continually or whatever, and or you can be surrounded by really really great people, people who you want to mentor, and people that are mentoring you, and that changes the whole canvas of what you do, regardless of the job, right? You may not like the work at all, or may not be your suit, but the reality is that when you do have those people kind of sewing into you, building on your character, helping you understand like what work and all these things that kind of come from that are, then I think you put yourself in a really good spot, especially to succeed in regards to going where you do actually want to go, right? Yeah, I've got a couple of good ones
100%.
too. I got a
Yeah, yeah.
the this one's totally a bit obscure, but way back when I um I was just starting out in the workforce. I was working at Tom Thumb, the grocery store, which I think's Randall's now or something. Um, and that could be a slog. So I was a sacker and a stalker and all that good stuff. And um, I remember just taking it as face value. This is work, ends up in a paycheck, and you move on, right? Like that's what the kid in me was kind of kicking the rocks on that trail. And I remember I worked alongside an individual. His name was Roderick, and just an incredible guy. Like constantly loving others, like making sure that he helped everybody else get their things done, and there's all sorts of like interesting people pleasing kind of stuff that could come out of that, which couldn't be positive, but he did it in such a way that it was very uplifting, especially when the guy would just literally take the time if you were downtrodden or just beat up. And so he took the time to teach and train me, but also teach me and train me in the ways of like empathy, right? I was a punk kid. I didn't give, two kicks about much of anything except just making some money and like making it through high school or whatever. And this guy just took the time. And I got so well trained on the aspects of empathy that it just really changed the trajectory of like who I was overall. And the second one was we were taking on this new initiative. It was called the internet. It was called the web. way way back in the day.
I love
Uh,
it.
bef- be-
But for those other viewers who haven't heard of that, what is the web?
well, actually, it was e-commerce. You remember when that was new, and
Oh yeah,
we were building upon. So I was at it was Radio Shack. So RadioShack.com, this new thing, nobody knew. It was a marketing. In fact, we were in the marketing department, right? There was no such thing as engineering other than like the pointy head kind of like capacitors and resistors, like the stuff you and I love. But that was
see what I was
engineering. Yeah, exactly. Uh, so they're like, okay, this is definitely a marketing thing. And we were writing incredibly complex things. Microsoft came in and gave us we kind of teamed up and took some funds there and started building what we used to be known as Commerce Server. Um, Started out as site server and then transitioned a big project. Really, I mean, really interesting work because nobody was really doing it. And true to form, like as an engineer, I'm over optimizing things. And I had two guys. One's my manager, and one was the lead engineer. And I was just Joe Dev, and the lead would always he said because he would look at the work I did and go, "This is really great work. However, it's overexpressed, it's overdone, it's overbaked." And of course, being wet behind the ears engineer, I'd take offense to it. Didn't know how to take feedback, and so I got really well trained in taking feedback and being okay with either someone's opinions or the fact that I over engineer stuff. And so it changed the way I wrote code even. And the manager, just like you were saying earlier, his name was one guy was his name was Mark, and the other guy was Macy. And I remember one day he walked in. He goes, "Hey, you're probably one of the best engineers we have, but you don't belong here." And I'm like, "Whoa, am I getting canned? Like what's going on here?" All right, hold on. Let me flip my phone. Flip open my phone and dial. Looking for a whatever it was. Just like alert. And he
rotary
goes,
phone back
"Yeah,
then.
that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, my
Yeah.
mistake." It was for rotary. Then later on, more fancy flip phones came out,
All
and
right, all right.
um, and he goes, "No, I'm not firing you or anything like that." He kind of laughed, but he was like, You're at the place where you stop growing." And I'm like, "Oh, what does that mean?" Again, just being regular kind of engineer, not leading anything except the efforts that I did. And he said, there's another opportunity out there. I know a guy, he's over at GameStop. They're trying to make a .com website. You should go do there because they're doing like incredible things. Whereas here we're literally just like a product catalog. You've done great work here. You've done all probably you can do. And he took this moment to go, I see you're not growing anymore. And instead of going, how can I convince Nick to stay? He's like, where would he best grow? And so setting down any needs of even his organization, which I thought was really interesting because um, I always thought like, well, aren't managers supposed to protect the org and protect the team and all that stuff? And I know we joke about like, hey, pushing people out so that other people, like, oh, you're done, we're done with you, can't take you anymore. But that he was also envisioning a place for other people to come into that role and grow there, so that other people needed to grow. Maybe I was stifling that because I was gobbling up all the work. Me, I just love writing code. And so that's probably an error on my part. But yeah, he's like, he connected me with the guy over at the GameStop, the guy who was running the GameStop.com org. And before it was even a thing, there was no such thing. And yeah, he was spot on. He was dead right. I went and I flourished and I grew and I, went on to do another start. Anyway, just it was cool. But I would have never seen that myself. I would have just stayed there.
I was going to ask that question. Like, did you get any idea? Were you having any of those thoughts? Like, was there any inkling that maybe something's not like this isn't my future, this isn't enough, where
Mm,
I'm not growing the way that I should? Or did it really like take that person who obviously like spent time outside of even meetings with you to think through that and to like think
yeah.
about you outside of that? Like, do you think you would have seen it? Do
Mm.
you like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, obviously, when I logged into my Windows for Workgroups box, my NT box, uh, um, I every time I would get to a problem, no matter how simple or how complex it was, I would always make it complex. And so I was hungry, and he saw that. He knew that that was happening in my code, and it wasn't that I didn't solve the problems, I just oversolved them. And he goes, you need a place to be challenged. And so he saw that. I probably there was probably in the back of my head knowing that every time I did approach something, I would over engineer it. Um, and that I was probably looking for something like I just this to stay interested. I would finish my work for half the week, and then the last half of the week I'd surf to the end of the internet, which you literally could do back then. And then and then rinse and repeat. I would learn every language. I JCL and TC Tickle, and like I, I would do mainframe stuff even though that wasn't even part of my job. And um it just I just was looking. I was so hungry, and I didn't recognize it myself, but it took him to go, "Hey, hold on. Stop." He and the other guy, of course, they were like, "It's clear you need growth. And I've got a place where you might be able to do that." And that was the
One
net
of the things
result.
that's one of the things that's really interesting to me hearing that was, you being in your own head, like there were symptoms, right? It sounds like
Yeah.
there were things that you were doing, behaviors that you were demonstrating, actions that you were taking because of this like inner root cause. But it sounds like you didn't actually know what that cause was. Like you were
No
just
idea.
doing things that were like fun or exciting or interesting, that you were kind of like molding your world to
Yeah.
solve a problem that maybe you didn't even realize was there. And it sounds like it took somebody that had perspective
Yeah.
about you and about what they were seeing, kind of recognize what the cause was for that, which then it sounds like the actual like solution for it was
Yeah.
not the one that you were seeking either. Like the right answer was a different one than you were coming to on your own to kind of scratch an itch, it sounds like.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And again, earmarks of great mentors, great leadership, actually, where it's just they can see the things that no one else can. Even when you're so close to yourself, right? Like oftentimes we can't see that. We're too close.
And it takes a special person to take the time and energy, I think, to see that
Hmm.
in you and to proactively like do something about it and help you. Like that I think those are the people you want to like latch
Yeah.
onto and keep engaging with like your whole career, your whole life. Because that's somebody, you mentioned the word empathy earlier, like
Yeah.
that's somebody who shows true empathy, right? Especially when it's not to their own benefit,
Right.
like in the situation that you described.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm certain there's a set of characteristics. I mean, we've already mentioned two or three of them, but a certain set of characteristics that anybody with kind of in a reasonable mindset could look and go, that individual would make a fantastic mentor. I should probably go ask her, or I should probably go reach out and see what they think. Um, I did, yeah.
do you think some of
Well,
those what do you think some of those characteristics are?
well,
What would
like
what would you
you,
be looking for?
empathy for sure.
Mhm.
Um, self-sacrifice. Um, I think a level-mindedness, and for me, one of the biggest characteristics of a good mentor is someone who's willing to tell you the truth, even if it's going to hurt the relationship. Meaning, like, even if it's going to be like, oh, I don't like hearing that, but you need to. And I think I've had so many major growth points for people telling me the direct truth of going, hey, listen, dude, you're way off here. Or, you know, you don't belong here. This is the wrong spot for you. Go grow here. It's just truth.
And it and I think what's one of the things that distinguishes a jerk from somebody who would be a good
Mhm.
mentor is what is their motivation
Yeah.
in making that statement. Like in all of those cases, it's because they cared about you. like
Yeah.
like that's somebody who is giving you that hard truth out of kindness and caring. Like that's
Yeah.
why they're doing it. It's not because they're playing politics or anything like that, right? Like they're
Yeah.
legitimately trying to be helpful
Yeah.
to you in some way.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned
You
kindness. So
think
what other ones do you think? And what are the ones that kind of
Yeah,
stick out to you?
I think another one that is experience, I think,
Mm,
is helpful for sure. Like, so there's people that have good intuition, like that's great. That's helpful. Like they sometimes, the people that just kind of always know the right thing to
yeah.
say. Like
Yeah.
there's just some of those people, they just have kind of a wisdom about them.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, especially like in your working world, that knowing the right thing to say or knowing the right advice to give is often one built on experiences, like
Yeah.
experiences with failure, experiences with successes, experiences with lots of people and lots of different situations. And so I think if you can find someone who has an like good experiences that you can learn from, but is also like a storyteller, maybe like somebody that's willing to work,
Mm,
like share what they've known, what they've learned with you, but also like apply context about you in it. I think that's something I would be looking for. Because it, sometimes people can give advice, which is great, but advice based on prior
yeah.
experiences
Yeah.
can be really helpful. And
Yeah.
one of the things I've thought a lot about, like I remember talking to some, like I think we had a code school come to one of the companies you and I both worked
Oh
at,
yeah.
and they asked a question, which was really like, what would you look for in your first job? I remember getting that very specific question, and one of the things that I answered to them is, look at the people you're going to be working with.
Mm,
And one of the things that I think is interesting is how can you identify whether a company has a culture of leadership from those tiny little interactions you get with them before you choose to start working there? Because
sure.
all the characteristics we just described, maybe you can pick those up after knowing people for a while, but picking them up in an interview
Right.
situation is
Right.
really difficult. And some of the things I've thought about with respect to that, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it too, is like what might you look for in just normal, quick, simple interactions with people to know, yeah, this company is going to be one that probably has a good
Mm,
culture of mentorship. And like one of the ones for me that I think about is just really like what's the mood and the tone of the
mm.
conversation that you're having. Do they look like all they care about is getting your answer, your answer to the same question that they've asked everyone else? Now, to be fair, you need to ask similar questions for um, to make sure you're equitable to everybody that you're interviewing. However, like, do they actually listen? Are they really kind of trying to understand what you're
Mm,
saying when you're answering questions? And are they asking good follow-ups? And are like, even I've had good interviews where like I'm learning things during the
mm,
interview where they're talking about the company and they're talking about, like, I ask questions about culture, like what's the culture like? And if they dive into questions about, we pair a lot, we work together a lot, we you can kind of get a vibe from,
right.
especially engineers, less so from leaders
Right.
sometimes, but from engineers you can get a vibe on what the company culture is like. And if it looks like people that care a lot about their craft and they care about you and like they've been caring to you during that process, it's probably a good sign there's going to be good people to learn from
Yeah.
at that company. What about you? Have you noticed things that are like good
Yeah.
tells that you can pick
Definitely.
up on quickly?
It's interesting that you mentioned like the interview process because that seems to always be like one of the most tenuous things, right? It's very tense. It's very like unknown, there's always this like I gotcha, kind of feeling to it, even though it's not intent. Hopefully it's not intentional. I have had some where they're like trying to catch me in this like thing, and I'm like, I don't know, 12 factor, like you just let me be random, just as random,
Yeah. If
but
they're
yeah,
trying to catch you in something, that's a
yeah,
bad sign,
I
right?
exactly. That would be, yeah, exactly. That's what it's like, what not to. I think there's a degree of patience too, but also candor and natural conversation. So I remember the interview I had at GitHub a few years back. I paired with a guy named Bruce, really neat guy, super cool guy, just does all these neat things like gem cutting and just interesting. He's a super interesting guy. And we were talking about the code as we were going. I was doing some kind of thing in Go, and that's so it's very natural. Like I try to at least be somewhat natural with just like writing the code and kind of talking about it as just like you would pair anyway. But we would have these orthogonal conversations that would just kind of just be very like um very patient, very calm, very like just welcomed. gems as we went through this exercise. And we got I got done with the whole thing, and we talked about the code a bit, but it was more that natural aspect of the conversation that I was like, I need to be here. Like I need to be around these people. This is a very like very intelligent organization, yes, but it's a very like empathetic. It's a very um I don't know. It just that was one of the best interviews I've had in my entire career. And it was while you doing the pairing exercise, which is usually the most like, oh, am I doing it right? Did I name my variables right? Or whatever. It was just nice.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
you can tell about the pressure of that situation. Now, obviously, like you don't always have control over what company you can work for,
Mhm.
and sometimes like you
Yeah.
just got to land a job. Like that's a real thing too.
Yeah.
But
It's a good
I
call.
would definitely say if you're in a situation where you're applying and you have options in front of you, and one pays more and the vibe isn't good, and one pays less and
Yeah.
the vibe is really, really good, take the one with the good vibe.
Yeah.
Because the even if you just get selfish and you're thinking about money, the next job after that job is going to pay a whole lot more if
Yeah.
you learn a lot in the environment than you're in versus taking a job that pays a lot, not growing and
Yeah.
ending up no better than you were when you joined the company. You're never gonna
Yeah.
progress your career the way that you would in one that pays less. Obviously, practical
Yeah.
realities come in, and people you got to make money to survive and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're given that kind of choice, I would say always take the choice where you're going to learn.
That's a
It's
hard
just
choice
will
because
always pay off.
when you're faced with something empirical and something soft,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yep.
I'll, like a set amount, and you're like, ooh, that looks nice. I like that. Do that. As opposed
Yeah.
to like, man, those people are really great. It took
And it's
me
really
maturity.
tough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it took for me personally, it took me maturity in my career to get there. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
just hop to like, don't look at the number, look at the people, like that took a bit.
And it's sad. And that's the sad thing because the time you need that maturity to be able to know that that's what you need
Mm-hmm.
is earlier than you can have
Yeah.
that mature.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I think is interesting is how much pain you have to go through to get the learnings that you wish you had at the beginning. And you can't even necessarily like teach those learnings. Like what we just said sounds great to us, but we've been
Yeah.
through a lot,
Yeah.
right? So like I can say that all day long.
Yeah.
And if I
Yeah.
told myself that from, 20 or 25 years ago, myself would have been
Yeah.
like, I'm going to take the one that's making a lot
Yeah.
more money.
Yeah. Be like, all right,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, old guy. Yeah, whatever. You keep on, you do your thing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're just having a midlife crisis. What are you
Right.
talking about?
Right.
Like, I'll be
Right.
fine. I'll be fine. Uh, yeah.
Well, so
Go
what do we
ahead.
do with this? So what do we do? Like this is really good information. Where do we go from here? The natural outcropping is growth and new perspectives. And I think that's a really great place to kind of land it is um what do y'all think? Like what is it? What is it? Where have you seen good things and bad things, and how can that help others?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the important things for people to ask themselves is what are they really looking for?
Mm,
Or in what moment are they in their career and their
yeah.
life? So are they somebody who's about to start their career that you might be looking for something different than you've been there for a while? Are you about to change companies? Are you at in a company and feel like something's missing? Like something's
Yeah.
missing either for you to receive, like are you not learning and growing? Or maybe to give because one of the things that I think is the most interesting is how much value you as a person gain from helping other people. Like it's one of the true I think secrets to feeling joy in life is to
Mm,
help other people. Like when you feel like you've been able to do that, it's the best feeling. Like you
yeah.
can't replicate that feeling just about any other way. Now, being a mentor is not always it's not always giving you those great feelings. Sometimes you might see somebody heading towards a cliff that they're going to fall off of and you try to stop them from falling and they fall off of it anyway. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
still can but even that's a learning opportunity. But um yeah, I think depending on where you're at and what you want, the answer to that question might be different. But I
Yeah.
think everybody should think about finding a great mentor, being a great mentor. If you're at a
Yeah.
new company looking for ways to create a culture of it, I mean, what do you think? Where do you think we should go?
Yeah. So I think so. again, this is all based on my opinion and what, the effects of how I've experienced it. And that's, I've tried to, now that I've come to a place in my career where I'm like, I better understand what growth even looks like or what helping others looks like. Imperfectly, I still get it wrong, obviously, but I think that I have a better understanding and a better like care for it, and that um, I'm pretty staunch on I need a mentor. I need someone who's going to help me speak truth to me, help me grow, help me understand kind of the way the things work around me. That's been through several trenches more than I have. I need a board of directors. So in the middle, these are my peers that I can just like come, hey, here's what I'm thinking, and here's, let's bounce some ideas off. We're all in the same place in life, kind of thing. And then I certainly need to be a mentor to others. And so I need to have, at least a couple folks underneath me so that I can grow in that regard too. That's kind of the ecosystem of mentorship, meaning that you can't just grow by having a mentor, right? Like that's limit. That's a thing, and you could benefit, but that's limiting. You're missing the other aspects of this kind of mentorship smelting pot. And so I think that's important. And I also think even if your company or wherever you're going or wherever they don't have a culture of mentorship, I think what a great place to like show some leadership there and do that. I wrote a blog post about that, about my own experience. Again, it's a protocol, kind of written like a protocol, because that's who I am. Sorry, but you can clip parts out and use what you think is beneficial, and if you want, or make your own culture of mentorship. But I think I think there's always space for this weird thing called mentorship. And I think if you have anybody has an opportunity to begin that kind of revolution, that movement, man, take it.
100%. In creating this, I put a poll out to ask like, what are some good
Mm.
topics? And one of the questions people asked was, how do we, I forget the exact wording, but it was along the lines of how do we know if a company has a great mentorship culture? How do we find answers to those questions? Like there were some questions along those lines, and one of the thoughts that I had on it was, um, there are companies that are fantastic for mentorship. Like
Hmm.
that's absolutely true. They have programs, they have tracking ways to track mentor mentee relationships and offer coaching and guiding for them and being those kinds of things. That's absolutely true. But I've also found like great mentors everywhere. You can be in the
Yeah,
worst company
yeah,
possible and there's good people around. Like
yeah.
there's the Mr. Rogers quote where it's just like, in any disaster, look for the people, the helpers, the ones that are helping
Mhm.
others. Like they're always there. There's always good people, no matter what. Like there is no company where 100% of the people are bad and nobody's there
Right,
to help. Like there's
right.
people I think are generally good. And now the environment can be toxic to it, right? Like that is
Yep.
that is that is the case. But no matter the situation, I mean, I can't think of anywhere or any team or anything I've ever worked, even when times have been stressful, where there weren't some good people around
Yeah,
that could
yeah,
could offer this kind of thing. And I really appreciate what you said in terms of, if that culture doesn't exist or those processes don't exist, what a good opportunity that is to create them. Like you can be
yeah,
a good example for this. Even if it's as simple, like even if you're feeling like you might not know enough to be a great mentor, maybe you don't have all that
right.
experience that we talked about, or you can still share what you've learned.
Yep.
Like even that is something. Like I learned this, go out of your way to share that fact, and even if it's not a formal like mentor mentee relationship, it's valuable too. And that's
Yeah,
a step in that path, I think, of just kind of making the culture around you better, and one where people are supporting and helping each other. So even if
yeah,
it's just like a tiny little baby step, there's plenty of those that can be taken.
yeah. You made me think of that's so good, man. You made me think of that video where this guy, you know it. I'm sure everybody knows it, but it's like this guy's in the middle of the field. He's at this kind of like fair, like this concert kind of like thing, a festival, and he just starts dancing, right? And everybody's around him, just kind of looking at him, and some people are giggling at him, like, "Oh, well, that guy's weird." But then another person kind of rums up, and then another person, and another person. All of a sudden, you've got this revolution of dance happening at this festival where it was just a blank, empty hill of one guy just dancing, just choosing to like, hey, I'm gonna like this is my thing. This is what I'm gonna do, and that's how I see this. Is that we can be we will. I mean, if you spend any time in this industry or any industry for that matter, you're gonna run into toxic people, toxic cultures, rough spots, challenging instances. Um, the choice the choice is do I run away from that or do I choose to do something about it? And that's going to be different for different people. Um, but I will say that doing nothing is not the right thing. Um, just kind of standing at the sideline and complaining about it, that's not going to help anybody. And so that's why I think it's so empowering to think, wow, no matter who you are, just like you were saying, I love that. You have life experience, you have experience with people. There's something you can share, especially if you're one of those individuals who just has this deep empathy, deep care for people. You can start a revolution. Why not?
And it is really hard to put yourself out there. Like I totally get it. I'm like an introvert by nature.
Yeah.
It's difficult to put yourself out there. Just doing it a few times.
Yeah.
Just those few little things that you start to do. As soon as you get a little bit of appreciation, like you get somebody that thanks you for something,
Mm,
like again, like in terms of positive dopamine hits and all of that stuff, that's up
right.
there amongst the best of them. So like it is something that can be overcome because it is hard and there's imposter syndrome and all those
Hmm.
kinds of things at play. Like it is hard to put yourself out there in that way, but you can start small, like one little
Yeah.
thing, one little way to help somebody else. Just even keeping your eyes open. And this isn't, I'm kind of straying away from mentorship at this point,
Yeah.
but like if you notice somebody struggling in some way, you don't even have
Mm,
to be a mentor in terms of like giving them guidance on how to stop, like how to get past that struggle. You can just ask them how they're doing,
yep.
right? Like you know, it's not even necessarily mentorship, but it's starting to create a culture where people are there
Mm,
for each other and supporting each other, and that
yeah.
kind of stuff can be contagious too.